Okay, I think everybody's about here, and it's 5:20, and we'll call the meeting of the Recode Rowlett Committee together. Tonight is July the 22nd, and it's like I said, about 5:20, looking at the clock on the wall. First item is the minutes. Did everybody get a chance to see the minutes of the July 8th meeting? Does anybody want them read? All right, do I hear a motion to adopt the minutes as they were presented?
I make a motion to adopt the July 8 minutes as presented.
I'll second.
And there was a motion and a second. All those in favor, raise your hand. Okay, looks to be unanimous. So we'll get right into it. Mr. Old, it's yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, members of Recode and Rowlett. Before I begin the presentation, I want to just take a moment. I want you guys to breathe. And the reason why I'm saying breathe, because from my perspective, you're almost halfway there. Tonight, we're hoping to get through the higher residential uses. And then after that, we will eventually get into the non-residential uses. So that would be all elements of commercial and those things. So, you know, it's not too early in this process to give yourselves a pat on the back. So pat yourself on the back. Halfway there. I've been encouraged by the last two meetings we've had. Got through the budget presentation, right? And our request for council. Well, I'm sorry, that was P&Z. Recode didn't have a budget presentation. But for those members who are on P&Z, you got through your budget presentation. But more specifically, we really did begin to tackle some of the difficult discussions as we're looking at higher densities. So tonight we're going to wrap it up. And then staff and I had a conversation earlier. I just kind of shared it with Christoph as well. Before we dive too much into the non-residential, we want to just kind of present to you at the next meeting just kind of an overview of where we've gone, kind of what are some of the things. We were just thinking about some things, and there's some, you know, there are always those outside elements that may influence development in the future. Talk about our capital improvement program, some road widening projects. We just want to make sure before we get out of the residential zoning districts that we kind of thought through meticulously kind of those development standards that we've set, and that they're not going to create additional issues. Okay, so now that we've given ourselves a pat, I didn't see anybody pat themselves in the back, but we can say it was ceremonial. We can get into the presentation. Okay, so this is our fifth meeting. You know, our agenda will include kind of looking at the overall districts themselves. So residential 6 and residential 8, which is for high density, the highest density developments. To the extent possible, as we've done in the past with our meetings, we're going to show some illustrations. If you know some equally impressive illustrations, let me know. I'm happy to work this computer and pull them up on the screen. This is meant to be a very, engaging, thought-provoking, involved meeting. So I might be controlling this, but we certainly need your feedback as we try to look through some of these projects. So looking at, the characteristics, process feedback, and then again, as I mentioned earlier, looking at the next set of non-residential zoning districts, which will be primarily commercial. We kind of break them out: retail, office, industrial, maybe even a mixed use category, combination of residential and retail, residential and office, however we may have. So, to clarify the scope and the approach, focus on the residential zone. So again, we're looking at the most intensive types of residential districts for the city. And everyone knows and remembers why we're here. Right? We have the Rowlett Development Code, and then we have this thing called the Form-Based Code. And the Form-Based Code is in three particular areas of the city, but as we've heard from our development community, it's causing great headache and heartache to try and meet some of those requirements. So our ultimate goal is to be able to look at zoning holistically within the city and then develop flexible enough zoning districts where our existing and our future projects can fit into these districts. Okay, so let's skip through some of these. We're gonna hit our next one, which is this part in. Mixed use residential downtown. We didn't talk about this one last time, right?
I think we ended, Mr. All, on, talking about the SF districts, duplex and townhomes, and then we were going to start with multifamily.
Okay, yes. So we think this is the next, I'm looking at staff, I want to make sure. This is the next zoning district, right, based upon our.
Yes.
Okay. So who wants to read the purpose and the purpose statement? Any volunteers? All right, to establish to foster a vibrant, pedestrian-oriented downtown environment by promoting high-density residential developments, including apartments and townhomes, integrated with the complementary ground floor office, retail, and personal services. This district aims to increase the downtown population, promote walkability, and transit-oriented development. Now, to that point, most of you, all of you probably participated in our downtown strategic plan, adopted in 2024. For those members who are, well, actually for everyone in here, P&Z, members of council, other representatives, you will begin to see anytime that we're bringing forward any development project for consideration of planning and zoning and or city council, if it falls within the downtown strategic plan, the staff will now indicate if the project as proposed, if it's consistent or not. That's been adopted. I happen to be a big advocate. Once we go through these strategic planning exercises and we adopt the plan, we not only breathe life into it, we make sure that as decisions are being made, we remind ourselves if it's consistent or not. So you will begin to see that. But to that point, these are strategic elements out of that strategic planning. We have the dark station, focused on and looking at higher residential populations in and around that, making sure that we understand the activities of transit-oriented development. So strategically place mixed-use housing with ground floor retail near major transit nodes, not just for the dark station, but also around major intersections, major thoroughfares in the city. So reduce the reliance of automobiles, and oftentimes, where I've practiced planning, particularly if you have some type of mass transit, there are oftentimes provisions by which you don't have to put in as many parking lots. Because, with the idea that people may walk, they may bike, or they may take transit as a means of getting them to and from. I've also seen similar provisions for senior housing. And that is because oftentimes, if seniors are living in a particular, a senior-only residential development, those that may be of age are not driving as much. And then we know that with the onset of COVID, and we started to experience grocery deliveries, some folks love the pleasure of just shopping online and then having, their food delivered to them. So I say all that to say, as we look into this particular type of zoning district, let's keep in mind kind of, some of these attributes of what we envision the district to be.
Can you define, is RM, is TOD a subset of RM?
TOD is a type of development project. And again, it's primarily focused around transit nodes. In this case, we have a dark station. So those that are within a walkable distance to dark. So we normally will do a quarter mile, half mile, a mile, typically no more than 1.5 miles. That's kind of out of the TOD range. If we had active bus service here, it would also fit in kind of that same pattern in terms of looking at particular bus locations and figuring out the closest development patterns in and around them. But yes, it is a subset of what we envision for this area. And most DOD developments do have ground floor region. Yes, sir.
If we stop here and insert an update on DART, what is, DART has just recently redone some, or calibrated some of the so-called bus service in town. And council members,
They'll be here Thursday. That DART will be speaking at that community meeting, addressing this, I'm sure specifically relative to downtown, with some opportunities that we have with them. There's a lot going on, so I think that's probably where you're gonna get your first taste of what directionally DART has to offer us and what some of our options will be working with DART.
We gonna get a kickback?
Pardon?
Are we gonna get a kickback?
Well, it's not really kickback, it's
So-
paid.
so,
Wow, it's making me nervous.
I'm just,
Yeah, I mean, DART is involved in it.
Yeah. I'm just one voice here, but I would prefer to maybe table this part of the discussion till we find out what DART has on its mind. Otherwise, whatever we look at now and move on from might be a whole different thing depending on what DART wants to do.
Well, I'm not, no, I don't necessarily agree with that. Because right now, what we're trying to do is just define the different, classifications. We're not assigning anyone anywhere to that classification, so until, and that's gonna come down the road, we'll have some answers for us to be able to make those decisions.
I would somewhat agree with you, that if we start talking about, okay, we want this on this floor, we want to do this, that, and it depends on the transit, and that's not what DART has in mind, then we'll have to go back and look at it.
But isn't really our guiding document is our strategic downtown plan, more than what DART specifically is gonna do. So I personally think we should go through this exercise. We'll flesh out details when we know more. Even after Thursday, we probably won't know enough. I hate to stop the process. Let's just,
No, I was just talking about skipping this part and going on to the
The
next.
train station's not going anywhere now.
oh, okay.
And again, this really isn't even connected, shouldn't really be connected to our downtown strategic plan.
That's what I was saying.
This is, what type of little building block do we wanna have in our tool bag? So that, we're gonna go ahead and assign certain ones to what our downtown strategic plan may say, but
Good.
Yeah, if I may, I'd actually take even one step before that, what you're discussing. And again, I'm probably a new kid, only really new kid on the block, so I haven't fully studied or understood the downtown strategic plan yet. But if we're talking about developing, I'd be curious, how much space are we talking about? Are we tearing stuff down to be able to do these things? That's kind of what I would.
The downtown strategic plan is a plan. It will take many, many, many years to fully accomplish because we have many different landowners doing different things. That includes Industrial Street as part of the downtown plan. What we have on Main Street, it's to help us as we think about development going forward. But we can't control property owners now. They could hold onto that for 30 years, and so therefore, if they don't sell, then there's nothing we can do. But I just think we should go through this exercise because we're just making definitions here, and I understand your point, Mr. Pollard, but I think the main thing on the walkability, we're less than a mile from the train station, which is the main hub, which I think as we consider transport, that's what we should consider. And I'm personally not as concerned about bus routes and things internally here downtown that are within walking distance to the train station, because that's not going anywhere. And I think that's the anchor that when we think about transportation, That's what we should consider here as it relates to today's exercise.
Okay, all right.
I would also add that whatever we do, we should take the lens of what gives us the highest probability of success, which has not been the lens throughout that for many, many years. So as we think about this and we think about the code and what we're doing here, let's look through that lens. That we don't create something that doesn't give us the highest probability of success.
Or what's its full?
Well, this is perfect timing because earlier today I was working on a presentation for Thursday's meeting and I happened to have the downtown strategic plan. So just in terms of establishing location, we can kind of show you what was adopted as it relates to the project here. So everything south of 66, west or east of, gotta make sure to do this right, Rowlett Road, and west of Bush Toll. It's generally the area. And part of this exercise they went through, they identified certain neighborhoods, if you will, areas, specific uses is one designation. Another designation is for your higher density residential development. Those are, you will find, are very close to the station itself. And then we had some existing houses, we call them, I think they're defined in the plan as cottages. They're meant to continue that small town feel, but continue to have their, the level of attraction that they offer to the city. And then some green space, and then some other higher densities. So this gives you kind of an example. And so again, to the point that was made earlier, what we're trying to do is figure out the types of land uses and the types of zoning districts in particular that will be complementary to a downtown footprint. And it just so happens that our downtown has, you know, a dark station, but it also is bordering major thoroughfares. So Rowlett, 66, and Bush Toll. So, you know, this is an opportunity for us to also look at additional retail opportunities. Not going to be covered in this, it'll be covered in the next set, but it does, it at least gives you an example of what we're talking about. Okay, so as we look through, go back to the presentation now, minimize this. And just for, if it's of anybody's interest, when we send out the next set of meetings, we'll make sure that you all have a link. If you haven't seen the downtown strategic plan, you can have a link and just kind of go through it at your leisure. But it kind of talks about that. So, you know, provide diverse housing. We kind of talked about that at the last meeting. So a variety of housing types and price points to accommodate different demographics. Again, I think I asked you guys in the last meeting, think about your nephews, nieces, your grandkids. You know, our generation, quite frankly, they'll tell you, I don't want to have to be responsible for an 1.5 acre lot of land. And I get it. Growing up in Arkansas, I had to mow that. And sometimes the riding more work, sometimes the push more work. My parents were more apt to be, because I was goof off on my riding mower, they were more apt to me using a push mower. And so for many of us, that level of dedication is embedded. But, you know, I talk to some of the younger generation and they're like, yeah, that's not me. I don't want a yard. Yeah, grandma had the green thumb. I'll kill a plastic plant. I get it. And so they're looking for, you know, that apartment style, urban living. And so just thinking through that as we're, you know, looking and identifying the types of appropriate uses that will fall into this zoning district. Enhance the urban form and character. Ensure new development is compatible with and enhances the historic and desired aesthetic of the downtown. So just at City Council last week, we had a developer on the east end that has proposed a mixed-use development comprised of about 2,000 square feet of retail on the first phase and then various residential units in size and bedrooms on the upper levels, but it spoke to the vision of what this intended. So a traditional mixed-use development. Encourage vertical and horizontal integration. And horizontal, and that's a very good point because you can have a mixed development where it's not necessarily contained in one building. It could be a combination of what we think of on a much larger scale, but when you look at kind of fire, firewall, thank you. I think initially that project probably only had the retail component, but now if you look all around, there's residential for that retail component. So I call it the built-in people factor. And oftentimes you like to see that because that's almost a guarantee of those merchants that they're gonna always have traffic coming in and out of those restaurants. So that's what we mean when we talk about horizontal. They're not necessarily in the same building, but they're on the same campus, if you will. And then support or principal uses include apartments, condominium complexes, townhomes, live work units, and so forth and so forth. Street level activation is compatible with ground floor commercial uses, maybe required. So here are some examples. The most prominent one we think of when we think of downtown is the Villages at Rowlett, and just kind of looking at the schematic. Ideally where the library is your commercial space, right? I've been talking to some of you. I've learned the history of that, so we won't dwell on that too much, right? However, and for all intents and purposes, that's what we mean when we're talking about a vertical integration. So some aspect of commercial at the ground floor, and then above apartments, and so forth and so on. So you guys know the village of Rowlett pretty well. Let's now that you kind of have a sense, let's kind of dive into what you have on the sheet, kind of look through some of the development standards. What are your initial thoughts? And this is also a good time, we're in an ideal location because we have so many cities, a little larger than Rowlett, a little smaller than Rowlett. They all have their unique downtown. For those cities that you visited, what is it that you like? What is it that you find? Because this isn't, we're not an anomaly when it comes to trying to figure out the right type of zoning use in a traditional downtown. We're a Main Street dedication, I believe, Christoph? Main Street through, I don't know, we don't know. We have a Main Street concept. It's a concept that we see, I'm trying to think who does the designation. It's either a ULI, Urban League, Urban Land Institute, or some other organization. But you can apply to have a Main Street designation if your town has certain elements, and one of them is walkability, some other activities. So maybe before we get into the specifics, let's talk through like downtowns that now we're going to exclude the Arlingtons and the Fort Worths and the Dallases. We're not that. But maybe what other downtowns of similar size have you gone to where you like the experience? You get the full-fledged experience.
I would say one of the most successful in the last 20 years, those who've been around and remember what it started out, is Grapevine.
Yeah.
Downtown Grapevine.
Yeah.
Will Hoyt's restaurant, and now a couple gas stations, and now they transform themselves into Christmas capital of Texas and the winery. Amazing, fantastic job. Also being aware of how many years it took them to get here too, for those of you who've been around, this is a 30-year project, but for me, that's probably the most successful one from there.
I would say Garland and Rockwall, just nearby. I think those are great.
Yeah.
And then a little further out, Waxahachie, they have absolutely, I mean, it's amazing what they've done there over the last decade. And just all the retail and restaurants and bars they have. I mean, it's daytime crowds, there's nighttime crowds. And I think ideally, if we could have something like that here, that would be fantastic.
Where in Rockwall?
Downtown.
Big,
Those
Because McKinney has kind of a similar.
McKinney's great too.
Yeah,
I think McKinney, well, I don't know the history of McKinney, but I think downtown McKinney's always kind of had that. Whereas like Garland used to be dead, used to
Right.
be, you know, totally not a destination, and now it's a destination. Rockwall the same way. I mean, you go 20 years ago to Rockwall, there might have been a couple little things over there, but they've really done a good job to make the whole square be, you know, a destination. McKinney's awesome, but I just don't know if they kind of started off that way or not.
Yeah, I think they had a lot of old in their actual downtown area.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
they've been transforming very nicely into,
And that seems to be the advantage that when I think about the good ones,
Yeah.
they started with some sort of a core, maybe like, you know, you had a courthouse, you have a square, you know, you had buildings around it. That's something we absolutely don't have. We have a little short streets, a couple old, but we got something to work with. I mean, don't get me wrong, but there is a more, there is a more traditional style that seems to make it much easier.
right.
So I think we do have a little more work cut out for us, that we don't just have that natural, kind of that natural infrastructure that lends itself to really, buff up real well.
I think a small one has done pretty decent in the last couple of years is Royce City. They, you know, the meat market and a couple of the other places they've opened up downtown.
That's a strip too, right? That's a strip.
It's just a,
Yeah,
Same idea,
okay, well, maybe that's all right.
same idea, that's what we do.
I mean, Granderson, think about Greenville Avenue.
Yeah.
Lower Greenville Avenue. I mean, it's gone through iterations, and when I was in high school and college years, it was kind of a hot spot. Then it died out and it emptied out, and now it's a, you know, and so that's a strip, and people park and walk, and I mean that's a little grander probably than what we can accomplish here and all that, but still it's the same. It's just a strip, and there's just stuff going on.
What I like about Grapevine, because our city and Grapevine share some similar elements. One of the main things, and it could be looked at upon to some people as detrimental to the community, but they found a way to work it. They have a railroad track running right in the middle of their town. And this is not below ground, this is above ground. It's primarily freight, but they have a dark, it's a train that runs between the airport and Fort Worth, downtown Fort Worth. But they don't let it hinder its ability to actually attract people. And so that train goes by within 20 minutes, the gates are up and you can continue your, but they strategically kind of built. So then there's the hotel that's there that looks onto the, you know, they have a green there, it looks onto the tracks. You know, they have an active winery train, right, but interesting. It uses the same tracks and it goes somewhere.
But that kind of like what, Fort Worth did with the stockyards is, they didn't try to hide the stockyard,
Right.
they actually incorporated it into what they had.
Yes. But they have all of this then traditional, you know, storefronts, if you will. And then nearby apartments and townhomes. And so they, even without having necessarily mass transit per se, they figured out the appropriate types of densities in and around, particularly Grapevine. So I thought that was a great illustration. And then, you know, we have opportunities for some of the lots to be redeveloped. How do we imagine, you know, when we get to the commercial side, how do we kind of reimagine those? Some of that is already happening organically. This developer is doing some, you know, mixed-use development, so that's gonna stabilize, add additional commercial activity downtown. You know, but what else can we do? Is there an opportunity? And again, we'll talk through this, but is there an opportunity to reimagine the cotton gin for the 15th time?
Yeah.
But there could be some synergy around that. But now that we've kind of discussed this, let's think through like what are some maybe existing, because part of what we're gonna have to also do is in this exercise, many of these types of developments, and staff, correct me if I'm wrong, they got approved through PD, right? Plan development. Which, if we're creating a zoning district now that could potentially accommodate them, those are gonna be non-conforming uses. So we're gonna have to fit them in because we wanna have, you know, we're never gonna get rid of all the non-conforming uses. No city is ever able to do that. However, what we can do through this exercise is try to make sure that we can have general design standards and guidelines, development standards, where we could potentially fit this in if this same project came to us today. It could fit into this zoning district, right? So, you know, I didn't want to, I wasn't thinking about 190 Main because they don't have any retail, but what are other development projects?
Well, the one right on the corner of Rowlett Road, I don't know
Yes.
what that's called, that does.
Yeah.
And that, the development that was approved last week for
Yes.
the other end of it is the same developer with the same concept.
Right.
Which I kind of like, I think, you know, and I speak for Jonathan, but I think he also did, it absolutely fits with what we're doing. There are two major retail spaces below that one.
Right.
Just like they're on the end, so I thought that just gave a certain, feng shui.
Right.
Feng shui to the heart.
I don't know, it's balanced, you know what I mean, but it's what we want. It's, you know, there'll be 4 stories, there's 3 stories of residence, and then we have that was my thing, I wanna make sure it was real retail
Right.
spots, not 1,000 square foot little 10 by, you know, whatever, hole in the walls, and, so, you know, I think that's a good start, and if you're, for me, if we're trying, I think everyone wants to build a 500 unit complex downtown, but these seem to fit the scale.
Right.
Scale, I guess maybe that's the
Yeah.
point of view. They scale right with the size of our downtown, that's my favorite.
So, let me, go off what Mike just said. What did they tell you on that particular complex, that condo complex, that they wanted to put down on the first floor?
Restaurant.
They are designed for restaurants,
Okay,
and that will be what they're actively,
restaurant or lots?
pardon me?
Yes.
Yeah. Two, yeah, no, I think the.
Well, what he mentioned, there's a reason why I'm saying this, what he mentioned to us in P and Z was a restaurant,
Okay,
okay, just one, which I hope he
I'll take one.
does. I hope he's successful in doing that, I really do. But I don't mean to pour water on this, but historically, the downtown plan goes back into the 90s and late 90s, early 2000s. And we were
Not
talking
this
about the same thing, first floor being retail, the old drugstore, little small department store, if you will, at that time. And it just has not taken off. I hope the guy's very successful.
You didn't have a critical mass of people downtown to start with. I will tell you, and I don't know how many of you spent time downtown, Morocco's and, yeah, cannot fit another person in there.
No, you're right, absolutely.
And so, you know, and again, that's 35 years ago. I think hopefully we're further down the road on what our plans are. But yeah, I mean, I think that's what we all want to see.
But going back to the McKinney's, the Rockwalls, the Wileys, if you will, even Roy City, to, I think, a lesser extent, but to Grapevine, what do those downtowns have? And my recollection, last time I was over the Grapevine, and I was there at a festival time, and it was
Yeah.
a horrible time trying to get down the street because there's so many people.
Yeah.
They were more or less closed down streets. But anyway, the long and short is, there were old buildings, they're old towns, and they had several blocks of a downtown,
Yes.
and we got basically one. Now, I'm not saying that we can't redevelop around and hopefully get a vision like that, but also in reality, and grounded there, is whatever we put into our code that somebody looks at and goes to, will it work in this town? And I you know, I don't want to pour water on stuff, but I guess I will, be a fireman to a degree. We have end caps on either side of the library. One of them's never been. leased out, never, since it's been built. The other ones had several tenants come and go, come and go. Only stability has been the library, and when it goes, do we have the support in the downtown that somebody who just won't stay vacant? So whatever we do in a code here, I want it to also be achievable.
Sure. Well, developers are not pioneers typically. So all these towns we're talking about, if you look at their per capita income, that's a big factor. And so you've got to be careful that you get it just right, which means you need people. Like if I'm going to open a restaurant, what's my first question? Well, how many people live around there? Well, there's nobody, a bunch of empty buildings. Oh, and there's a dart station. Well, how many people are traveling from Dart to come to our restaurant for Rowlett? None, right? In fact, it's probably something different. So as a developer, I need to know what's the per capita income, what's the median household income, how many households are there? You see there's 249 units, how it feels like that. What's their rent? You know, all that is factors to a development plan. So I think as we, bring this back home, as we think about this, let's think about what we can build that attracts development. Because I think it's.
And right now, you've got the station, which is that the name of it over there by the,
Yeah, that makes sense.
yeah, just down. And the station is a pretty good number of units there. Here, now we have one down in Maine, there's to be some other apartments built just to the south of 190. And have we seen what I think a lot of us would love to see is a lot of restaurants flock here, and you have a restaurant that's had 4 or 5 people through it, where Cafe Rowlett or Rowlett Cafe is right at the end of the station, and you've got Rocco's. There was going to be Marco's, or I think that, what was his name, Dino's, that was going to move in the old police station and planning department, and that folded up and went away, right across the street. And so whatever we do, I want it to be where it's achievable, and it's just not, we put a plan on there, and the commercial component of it goes away. We can build apartments like crazy down here if you just want to go multifamily. But I don't think that we won't see just multifamily.
Absolutely not.
No.
Nobody's, I don't think, proposing anything.
But, you look at the station, it's probably, and 190 Main, neither one of them have a commercial component on the first floors.
And either one of them will build from this time forward. So I think it's incumbent on us to make sure we don't make the mistakes that we have already identified as being problems. Let's don't do that. Let's do something else. If we're doing this process, that's what we focus on. We don't want this, we want this.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think our purpose tonight, as we've heard the term many times, the toolbox, right? We give the developer the toolbox, then it's incumbent on them to build it, and they will come. But we just have to give them the tools.
So if they price it properly. That's part of,
And I
that's
can
part of
tell
the
you-
problem with the village right now, is that they have the library in there.
But I can tell you the point about critical mass, we're getting to the point to where you're not gonna have to worry too much longer because the residents are gonna demand it. They're gonna demand the services. And not from us, the city officials, but they're gonna demand it from the commercial side.
That's when the scales.
That's when the scales are gonna turn. So, as these 2 new mixed-use developments are coming online, we'll begin to see the synergies, also, kind of what we're doing programmatically with the city. I wanna make sure I get it wrong, in September Live on Fridays, is this what it, is that?
Friday Night
Yeah, Friday Night Live, is that what I saw come in?
Live
So-
on Main, yeah.
Yeah, that's it, Live on Main,
Live
that's it.
on Main.
So those types of activities are gonna show potential you know, retail establishments, oh wow, they have this built-in people population now. This built-in population where we gotta test it, we gotta see what's coming. And, you know, part of what we envision, what we know works well with mixed-use developments. Now, it does require the right type of mix, because I was trying to think, like the closest coffee place, everybody likes to drink coffee when it gets cold, right? And I couldn't think of one on Main Street. I couldn't even think.
Oh, we have a great
Well,
one.
there's a great one on
There's
Main.
one on
It's actually, I think it's Dallas.
I think it might be the most popular thing on Main.
Yeah.
Is that it? What is it called?
I love to see that.
Okay. And it's closer to Rowlett, to the Rowlett. So that's probably where the people from the villages are going to get their quick coffee if they're driving off to work or the other development, right?
I'll just tell you anecdotally that Bankhead absolutely draws people.
Yeah.
I know y'all, you know, girlfriends, my wife's there, so that's what they do. They go hang out at girlfriends until they get a seat at Baracas, and then they go off to Baracas and they drink a couple glasses of wine, and they come back to girlfriends and they buy stuff.
Right, exactly.
That is a happening dynamic, and it's the same with Broncos. And those places are busy and they're successful, and to the point, you know, developers are following the money. I
Yes.
mean, if I see restaurants that can't even keep up with the demand that they've got,
Right.
and there's a spot right across the street, I don't know, man, that looks like maybe something I'm interested in.
So it's 6:02. I want to keep us on track. Let's now look specifically, now that we've had this robust conversation, let's look at the specific development standards and kind of talk through, you know, what we need to do to shape the standards. And who wants to start us off?
Yeah, I like them. Well, we had multifamily left, but we have RN here.
This is just one,
This is just.
just adding the mixed use part, okay.
So we're gonna get to the highest, in terms of residential intensity next. This is your traditional downtown and kind of what we envision as ground floor retail, and then residential.
I think what this one does is allow you to have almost an apartment style development. I was trying to pull up the meeting last week to see what the building standards were that y'all were referencing, but it keeps reloading. But I think really this is looking at if you were to build a higher multifamily, how would you do it? And the standards that are here really dictate how the building is going to be constructed, because within 15 feet of a right of way, it can only be 40 feet high, which is the same height as the single family dwellings or the townhouses that we did in the previous zoning district. And then your minimum side yard is 10 feet per story adjacent to a single family district or use. So if you're a 4-story building, you're now 40 feet away.
Yeah, before we do RN, we did not, last time we were here, we did not complete R5. We had talked, yeah, we had talked duplex, we talked detached duplex townhomes.
I think it's in the minutes, right?
Yeah.
We did not do the multifamily. So, did not review that one. Correct, Mr. Pollard?
That's correct.
Correct.
We did not do.
We have consensus on this side of the table.
Okay. We definitely made a motion to approve
Yes.
R5 with the multifamily as it's written.
So, is that what
We may need to go back and correct that.
Because we, in fact, the last comment was that we were gonna hold that over to this one.
See if that works in our.
I thought we were talking about multifamily as in
Correct.
these next
Yeah.
discussion. Okay.
So with that being said,
The building standards,
Yes.
okay.
We need to create this.
She was on the back end.
Oh, awesome.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, we definitely voted on R5,
Yeah.
but if we need to reopen it, let's reopen it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just set up, the minutes talks about the development standards and for single family detached and then for townhomes and, duplexes and townhomes. Down at the bottom of page 2 and page 3, it just says maximum height. But there's nothing about the true multifamily apartment companies.
Correct. Good, just kidding, so. Well, I think this is more limiting on your multifamily. So if you were to incorporate it in a larger mixed-use project, you'd have more stringent setbacks and correct. Because if you look at the next one on RN, it's more flexible. There's no minimum lot width or depth because you may have an atypical pie-shaped lot. Or if you look at the downtown plan, there's some that look like a jelly bean.
Right.
And so how do you set a minimum width and then try and build a rectangular or a boomerang-shaped building?
There isn't one, but there's just
Some standards.
And if you think about the multifamily that's mentioned in R5, I'm gonna step away from the standards that you discussed last time now and talk about, I'm intentionally not talking about density. I'm calling it residential intensity. It's a play on words, right? So if you think about what we discussed and the different types of products that we looked at, you could have a multifamily, but it would need to achieve a similar residential intensity.
Right. And that's what we did in R5, is we
Right.
left the density at 12 to 20
12 to 20.
units to the acre, which is the same as all of the other residential intensities.
Correct.
And it has increased setbacks and build-to zones. So it would allow you to put a multifamily project
Right.
surrounded by a townhome duplex
Right.
or single-family attached, but it's really restricted if you were to do that alone. I don't know that you would pick R5 as your zoning ordinance if you
Right.
truly just wanted to do a multifamily building.
Exactly. That's where this comes in. The only difference is with this particular one, there has to be some element, to the point that someone made about 190, there has to be some element of commercial at the ground floor.
I guess, because that's not allowed in the previous one.
So in the R5 multifamily, is there anything, should we put in there that it would require an SUP, or does the fact that we already have a ordinance that says that is sufficient?
I hate SUPs,
What's that?
I said, I hate SUPs, I mean, if you
Yeah,
can,
but
you still gotta get them, I get it, but if you get it as close to what it needs to be.
no, the SUP is just because it's a multifamily unit.
Okay,
It's an apartment unit, an apartment complex.
okay.
That's it.
Or condominium development, or, you know, so the idea is to have that come before the hearing body so that you can consider all of the elements of that.
Right, right, even though it meets all these codes and he could build it, he still has to bring it to the PNC and council.
Do you put that in the development restrictions or in the,
Well, that's what they're asking, is where's the?
is that in the next piece? In the-
That'll be in the use charge development, yeah.
Right.
That's more.
Most zoning districts,
Multifamily?
yeah,
So if you were to go back to R5, if you were to look at this chart and say, here are the standards for multifamily, but it requires an SUP to access it.
Right.
Is that done in the use chart or is it done in the development standards in the next
Use chart.
section?
yeah.
So these are, we're looking at density and dimensional, which is a different section of
Right.
code than our
Well,
districts.
With that being said, then I make a motion to approve the multifamily section of the R5 as written.
I second.
All in favor? Oh, I'm sorry.
Thanks, Chairman.
Next time.
We got a motion from behind.
A motion to accept the multifamily as written and presented by the city, and, second. All those in favor? Lift your hands. All those opposed? Okay, all right, now,
Now we can
let's
go
go
back
to
to
REM.
RN, okay. So, again, ground floor, retail, some aspect of commercial, or it could be a campus where you have, and somebody mentioned 190. Let's say 190 buys, because in our downtown strategic plan, we anticipate, the vision is to have retail just south of where that building is located, if I'm not mistaken.
It's just, retail is just east of it.
East of,
No, future development, I'm saying.
Yeah, along 190.
Yes, for future development. But let's say they were able to purchase the adjacent lot. They combined the lot with their existing building, and they wanted to put retail. That would be an example of a horizontal mixed-use development, not necessarily a part of the residential building that's
Only if
existing.
it's done simultaneously.
No,
No,
Just-
yes, we've been burnt in the past.
I don't think it matters, because see, here's the thing, you can't control what the developer does, like tomorrow in terms of acquiring the adjacent properties, right? So they could acquire the adjacent property and then, do a lot merger and have that new piece of property as a part of their current development. What I'm saying is that gets at what a mixed-use development would be as horizontal. That's all the point I'm
Right,
making.
and what I'm saying, Mr. Hall, is that on Rowlett Road,
Yeah.
just south of Main Street, we had a multifamily development in there approved with a commercial development that was gonna be horizontal to the scene.
Right.
And the developer went ahead and developed his apartment complex and then sold the property adjacent. And that's why I said no.
And it never got
Yeah,
developed.
yeah, we do that too.
You have a,
We need to make sure that we have that.
you have another development like that on 190 Main, here at the corner, that, if you notice, what's undeveloped is a strip that's along the actual corridor of 190.
Right.
And that was for the same thing. Now, we've had on P and Z end, a couple of months ago, a guy come in and present that he wants to build there. But the point is, you've got apartments going in there now, and there's that empty strip of commercial. And up to the point, we've been burnt too many times where a residential component comes in, and then they abandon the commercial one.
So here's a way in which I've had to deal with this in previous places where I work. There is a control that you have as the city. And the city is, but it's typically codified in the development agreement. So before
It's typically codified where?
in the development agreement. So before you issue your 51st permit, or you issue 50% of the, depends upon how we do it here. Because I don't know how, Christoph or staff, can you guys, how do we issue a certificate of occupancy for an apartment building? Do they only get one, or is it per unit?
it is one per building,
One per building.
yes.
So that might be a challenge, because where I've worked in other places, every unit had to get signed off and CO. And so we would put in a preventive measure by the time you get halfway. If the other part of the development that's a part of it, in this case would be commercial development, it has to get started and initiated before you can get the remaining.
And we could do the same thing, because even if it's a single unit for living, and it's gonna have a single CO, before that CO is issued.
Right, the final CO.
It's gotta be breaking ground and doing something like that.
Exactly. You could hold up the issuance of the certificate of occupancy until that other part, but that's typically codified in the development. Or if it is done at both the planning and zoning and or city council level, where they stipulate that for condition.
Which is probably what will happen.
I'm not seeing that, honestly, successful. I've not seen the bottom level of an apartment complex be successful, at least
as retail. In fact, in Las Colinas, where it is highly dense and a dart station,
Right.
they put in retail and none of it's leased ever. All the apartments fine.
And that was my point a while ago, was that reality and what we would like to see may be two different things.
Exactly, so let's be careful that we don't put a requirement that, let's be careful what we zone and where. And not assume, well, we'll just make the first level retail. Well, if it's empty, then it becomes blight, it's no good. And there's no tax income from that, by the way, so.
Being simplistic here, wouldn't you pick, okay, wouldn't there be two different, okay, if I want an apartment with retail, I'd pick RM. If I want just an apartment, I'd pick something else.
Well, here's the thing, and I don't want this to be lost on anyone. We're saying that this particular zoning district is gonna be designated for downtown. And the reason why is because, one, we have a vision for what we want to consider, just the built environment and how we want a more active and more engaging kind of downtown. So what we know is we're building up our residential population. Those same people are gonna need goods and services. We wanna make it convenient for them. This happens to also be a gathering place for many city activities. It's a place where you can simply designate, you put in your GPS, I wanna go to Rowlett. And if you don't put in a specific address, they're gonna take you to City Hall. Every city, it happens like, they'll take you to your main, City Hall location. So it becomes its own destination point. The critical part is, what happens when you start to have this influx of people and you don't have their services? We are already experiencing retail, which means if we're not giving our residents the services, they're gonna go outside the city to purchase and be consumers elsewhere. We're losing that tax dollar base. So, for what we kind of talked about, there are going to be some hits and misses. But as we continue to grow this population, as we begin to re-energize what downtown is, as we begin to continue to build subdivisions across, downtown becomes a destination. But we have to be strategic in these next things that we look at, these next planning projects that we look at, and make sure that they have all the components.
Well, I understand, we can go ahead and have this mixed use component or whatnot, but, once City Hall gets built, the police department moves, courts move, we develop that for the library, we move the library, all of a sudden you're gonna have vast fields of open space.
Exactly.
Now, the question is, how do you fill those?
Right.
So part of it, I think, one is the cost of the space. Okay, and the developer, if he's gonna just let it sit there, he can, but if he wants to get something, he's gonna go ahead and adjust that. But we also have to have, just like you said, when you look at these other cities that are little mini destinations or whatnot, they have a theme, they have a reason, they have something going on. And I guess that's the question where the downtown
Chamber
development plan needs to figure out what it is that we are, that we can capitalize on and have people come and draw.
Well, I think some of it also is who you approve to get to develop. For example, Firewall, my understanding, and I've heard this from third hand, so I don't know how accurate it is, they have office buildings built in above the stores on the main, and they were empty by and large. I had a friend that rented the office there, and I visited the whole floor, except he was the only one in the whole floor.
Right.
And it was just empty. And what he told me was it was built by a big corporation, and they held their rent so high that it was cost prohibitive for people to lease out the office. And it didn't matter because number one, they were big enough, and number two, on the balance sheets, it showed the value of the property. And so exactly. So ultimately, they didn't care if they were getting revenue in the door because the value of the balance sheet was high enough for them to sell it or for their stock price or whatever it may be. So I don't know if to answer that question, if it's who P&Z and the city council and everything else who we approve to develop, maybe that's part of it. I don't know if that's legal. I don't know, but that's
Okay,
just,
so what you're
And
listening
you're not
to.
yeah.
And isn't that, this is just anecdotally again, but that's what I've heard is a big problem with the spaces under the village.
Right, so just.
Yeah,
Their rent is so high that nobody can afford to come in and,
Well, the city even looked at trying to make the deal
Yeah.
to expand the library, and it was
Same
too
thing's
much.
true with the harbor, exact same scenario.
yeah.
And I know the developer.
Yeah, so I think those are real valid points. And the one thing I keep going back to also, at least for me, I'm thinking really Main Street from Rowlett Road to 190. That's what I think. It's like, our area is really much bigger than that, and it's really if you take it in total, it's a much more challenging area. Main Street, you kind of focus on, you start getting on Martin and Industrial and kind of some of these other. So I think it's really important as we do this, that we understand that, there's some easier parts and there's some parts that will be pretty hard, and we need to be flexible enough that maybe these areas are gonna take we're gonna have to sell them a little more, that we make sure we make it easy for development to come in, the kind of development we want, but it is easy enough for them to come in that we're just not absolutely grinding them down. We need them. That makes sense.
Willing to reserve some retail area.
Right.
For instance, you talked about next to 190 Bank, instead of putting apartments there, does it make sense to put a strip center and make that retail?
Right.
Then to hold our ground on that kind of thing. As opposed to saying the uppers or apartments, lower is retail that no one will ever lease.
I like the horizontal idea, and actually get anchor tenants to come in, that's the ideal.
Exactly.
If somebody wants to build a bankhead on Martin or something, that for me would be like a big major.
Then second, once you get all.
So any thoughts? Are you guys open to the?
And that's what we have coming in between 190 Main and 190 along that strip.
Yeah.
This is two
Yeah.
large commercial buildings.
But again, I don't forget industrial, don't forget Martin. I think if we're really gonna be holistic about this, those need to be considered. They're a lot more challenging.
They're a lot more challenging
A
now.
lot
just
more
because
challenging,
there's
it'll take a lot more
industrial,
time, but I don't wanna be making, this is a big deal, what we're doing right here, and I don't want us to be limiting ourselves on what we might be able to do, and it may be 5, 10, I don't know, whatever timeline it is, maybe a while, but let's make sure that we lay it on a framework that those areas can be developed too, without having to come back and have this.
And that's part of the downtown plan.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, it absolutely is, but it's much more difficult, it's way more nebulous than.
And I understand, and that's why I mentioned at the beginning, realistically, putting a building, 4-story building, putting commercial on the bottom and the upper 2 through 4 is apartments or condos, whatever it may be, residential. It just hadn't caught on and worked here. It just hadn't. And I hope those guys on those condos across from Old First Methodist or First Methodist, Old First Baptist, I wish them well. I hope they do well. And if you go back and look, I asked what they wanted to put in here. I just hope it just doesn't become. I had one developer tell me one time he was looking at doing a concept at Miller and 190. And I said, so what happens when you're not able to get the commercial filled on first floors? They said, I'll wait a couple of years, and if I don't have any bites, I'll come back to the city and I'll tell them I need to fill those in for apartments. And I said, how? He said, because I have the right to finish my development. So,
Valid point.
I wish them well, but I like the strip more. That has to be, in conjunction, not the first floor.
And that's the flexibility of what is being proposed here. So it can either be vertical or horizontal, right? So you could do that. Now, what isn't a part of this committee's task, and what we kind of discussed a lot about, and it should not fall on deaf ear, but it's those activities that happen outside of this committee. So the Chamber of Commerce,
Yeah.
our economic development team are also a part of trying to help us. We're just handling the land use.
Yes.
But a lot of what's been talked about and discussed today kind of happens outside of the land use. It is making sure that we're providing statistical data to those developers or those retailers that have an interest. Maybe they don't know that there are opportunities here in some of these new projects and these new developments.
Yeah.
And so just always plugging and pushing information toward them so that they can take a bite of the apple, so to speak. So, but you know, that can't be decided at the land use level, notwithstanding your concerns that you have expressed. So, you know, we're thinking either through a vertical or a horizontal integration for downtown specifically, we should be able to achieve some stability in terms of the retail component in particular, and then at the same time meet the needs of our, you know, new residential population, which will be our goal. Any thoughts on those development standards? Anything you would like to change?
How many floors is 60 feet? Sorry, that's, so max building height, 45 feet within 15 feet of lot line? Is that a 3-story building?
Well, we did that on the other, for, the townhome piece.
Gives you 3/4 of the,
Three
not
floors
four,
with the-
not 4 full floors.
So should we make that higher?
No,
Well,
let's
what
make
it
it
does is, as you move away, the building can
We
get
go higher?
So Kelly had a good point, I don't know if you're
Yeah, we were talking about, the standards here in the RM, they're really quite fair. And what it might really should look like is R5 with the added overlay of, the integration of the limited commercial uses. Perhaps we can take out a single family detached if you don't want that included in this piece, but single family attached, duplex, townhomes, and multifamily piece, just as we had it in R5, because it doesn't have any of that here. So we were talking about how you could conceivably approve a 5-foot wide townhome with what's proposed.
So remember, we're kind of taking these in graduated steps, so we're stepping up
Yeah.
the residential intensity.
Yeah.
Notice I didn't use density,
Um,
residential intensity.
Sure.
So think about it as a step up. One of the challenges as I look through the downtown strategic plan, and I say it's a challenge when we're thinking about the future of downtown, is the presence of some single family that is so close. Someone had commented earlier about how, you know, some of the downtowns differ. You know, we had such a compact downtown. I mean, it was almost 2 blocks, you know, almost. And then we ran right into single family housing, which is gonna automatically be lower densities. It's not gonna necessarily support the type of retail establishments in particular that we envision for a traditional downtown. So don't wanna repeat those development patterns. I won't call them mistakes. But, you know, with this vision of a new downtown, don't necessarily want to do that. So, you know, having a variety of residential types is good, but what's the driving point is residential intensity. Because, you know, most downtowns you go to, you don't see single family. I mean, you'll catch some streets maybe on a peripheral of the downtown area, but the core downtown, you know, you have commercial buildings, high rises, you know, apartment buildings.
You'll see it widely, but it's been converted to retail.
Yes, exactly. Cigar lounge, right?
That's why you got ice cream shops and stuff.
Or I
But
or
they're good.
I saw that store girlfriend. I was like,
So
oh,
maybe we just want this, just like
interesting.
town.
I was driving by. I was
Well,
like,
you know, but I think a lot of those, and Stan, you probably know lots about this, most of those are owned by,
1 or 2 people.
yeah, between Bankhead and between Brown, most of that's owned by one family.
Right.
Straight.
Yeah, Strady owns it, I don't think anybody has the idea that 20 years from now, that building, you know, those houses are gonna be standing there, but I think that's why it's so important to do this right,
Right.
because those will be taken down.
Yeah.
And what they're replaced with is what we're doing here, and I think that's.
And you can either line up to a bunch of apartments, just flat out apartments, or expands downtown / Main Street to a second block or, while you're down by the railroad track, but going back, that the next 2 blocks also become more business than they are residential.
Absolutely.
And that's what I would hope that we had.
And I absolutely agree, and that goes back to this horizontal.
Right.
You know, being willing to, and hopefully being able to have everything in place, so Main Street itself has horizontal, where not everything is just one 20-unit, 4-story townhome with, to your point, retail downstairs. So, yeah, I think.
But I would like, if we go to a 3-story, I would like, and this may not be the right code to stick it in, maybe it is, require an elevator. I'm serious about that.
3 stories commercial is gonna have an elevator no matter what.
Well, but
By-
if it's
by
mixed
code.
use, it don't necessarily.
Now, by building code, it does.
It does.
It does.
So
Yes.
if I put any kind of residential above first 2 floors, it's gonna have to have.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Any new construction that's 3 stories or more is required to have an elevator.
Yes.
Because I would like a product that's good, and if you don't have elevators and just stairs, you're not gonna get a high quality product.
Right.
So the unit that is being built at, what, 4410 Main, the one that was just approved Thursday, had an elevator?
I don't know.
So-
Oh, we saw elevation.
We wouldn't have looked at the elevator at the planning element.
I'm sorry?
We wouldn't have looked at the inside of the.
Well,
planning
no, I'm saying, it's gonna have an
If
elevator.
it comes to the building and that's
If it
what's
comes to
required, then
building,
we'll
it's
have to
not.
have an elevator. So that will be looked at the building.
Can you quote your source here?
The 2021 International Building Code with Rowlett amendments.
With your outlet amendments?
Yes.
I don't have the outlet amendments.
The Rowlett amendments are just, there's a few things that deal with the building heights of buildings under 55 feet, which is, it's more for firefighter access.
But the 2021 IBC.
Yes.
It sounds like we got a working group over here that's been deliberating. Let's hear from the duo.
One that know how to do math.
The developer attorney duo.
We're coming back.
That's really dangerous, is to put a developer.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we're finding that out.
We're thinking about the single-family attached duplex and townhomes, and increasing the density to 30 units per
Residential
acre.
intensity? Okay.
Yeah, the residential intensity.
No, it's good.
Because then we can leave the multifamily to the residential high-rise
Right.
and still accomplish the same thing.
So then your mixed-use residential becomes a blend of the 2 on either side. You take the residential attached densities from the
The
single.
highest end with the highest.
The highest end,
Right.
and then you reach above to go to the residential high-rise,
Right.
and you put them
Lowest
together, lowest end,
Right.
and you put them in the residential mixed use.
Yeah.
And then overlay that to include limited commercial retail uses.
Yeah.
That's good. Is there any
Just the same
benchmarking
thing.
here before we go and do this? Is there benchmarking for another city that's done this that says, yes, that's exactly what you want to do, or here's the pitfalls? I always get worried when we start manipulating things that we're not benchmarking and we're putting ourselves in a unique position.
It's a good question. Let me approach it like this. Some of what we're discussing, we have to really also look at the realities of what we're dealing with. Some of this, we're talking about, said this to the staff earlier today. If the hole is big enough, you can fit in a square peg, right?
That's what I'm thinking. I don't think anybody in this room wants any unintended consequences.
Right, exactly. And I understand that. But my point in saying that is, part of what we have to do is look at the realities of what we have and make sure that as we go through this exercise, we can properly classify the village. Because right now, the village was done PD, correct?
No, the village is form-based.
So since we're gonna get away from all of that, how could we today, if that project came before us, what zoning district would it fit in? However we feel about the village, if that was presented to us, are we creating a zoning district that would now allow it to be classified in one of these zoning districts we're discussing?
But Kelly, I mean, didn't you say at one point, because we build a 5-foot wide structure, I mean.
We're fixing that.
Yeah, that's the kind of stuff I want
Yeah,
to.
that, we're fixing that with this
Right.
amendment
Okay.
to the proposal.
But yeah, in terms of benchmarking, we kind of do this exercise, but remember, for this particular district, we kind of have an overarching goal too. That's to meet the intent of the downtown specific plan. So we don't wanna, we don't wanna undo and insert things that are gonna be contradictory to what that whole vision is.
Yeah, I'm not trying to stop any, I just think that this has been an area of vulnerability for the city.
Sure.
And it's an area for every city to have vulnerability. So to the extent that we can compare and contrast and
Yes.
speak with others about how they might have attacked this, I would feel more comfortable. Not to hold anything.
As we're creating these, then we have to go and apply them, and as we do that, we're going to be essentially vetting.
Okay, I want
As
to be
we're
a
doing
stick, I want to be a stick in the spoke here for a second, because, I mean, and I know you said that after we do this, we go to the commercial side and everything, but, having been here over 20 years, is residential really the big issue for Rowlett versus commercial? I mean, everybody I've ever heard or talked is, there's nothing here to keep people to shop. And I know we're talking about residential, but did we put the cart before the horse? Should we have talked about commercial first and then residential?
Nobody would have built commercial if they didn't have residential base.
But we do have residential already.
We're gonna,
Not in the density that developers want.
Okay.
not in the downtown situation, I think we have to remember, this is a
Okay.
small geographic area, this isn't.
And a lot of times we're talking about residential developers and the problems residential developers are having with the city and working through the city.
Okay, I mean, maybe I misunderstood that this was key focus just on downtown.
Yes.
I thought it was for the entire city.
No, the
Just-
RM is downtown.
Yes, we're down.
RM is just the downtown plan.
But to answer your question, there's no right or wrong way in terms of the approach of Recode. You could have, yes, started with commercial. The ultimate goal is, again, because of the conflicting codes that we currently have, how can we better streamline how we approach land use overall by making the existing and the future of our development activities fall into a more limited group of zoning districts? Because,
More manageable.
guys, help me out here. Right now, we have, just looking at the
39?
Rowlett code, right? We have multiple residential zoning districts.
Yes, and that part I understand, yeah.
Right.
16?
16.
And I'll say a lot of the impetus for our planned developments is residential development,
Right.
not commercial development.
Right.
So,
We studied this in 2009 in Las Colinas, and if you look at Las Colinas, you'll see that it was built out tremendously
Mhm.
with commercial real estate. 75% tax base of Irving is commercial, to your point.
Mhm.
But when they were building out the rest of Las Colinas, apartments, quote unquote, the mayor, we need elevators. I want to see larger elevators. So once that density happened, guess what happened? Toyota Music Factory came in, and you got all the retail you could ever want, and it's thriving. But it wasn't the commercial first. You've got to have a demand. And as I said earlier, developers don't build where there's not concentrations of high-income masses. And so that's what we need to be thinking about.
So what's your thoughts on the development standards today? Did you guys work out anything related to RM?
Well, the suggestion was to go with the R5 standards for single-family attached duplex and townhomes, increasing the density to 30.
Okay.
And with the additional allowance, for the commercial, the limited commercial retail uses.
And then how high,
And then
how
we-
high the residential intensity?
Well, that's the question, is we need to bring in a multifamily intensity, and you bring in the high-rise residential, or do you bring in the multifamily from R5?
I can give you a sneak peek of what the high rise looks like.
That's just happening on the town, not planning.
Right.
So, there one? That quick, just
And
no
also,
flash.
That's gonna be pretty hard to fit on that.
Well,
For princes.
you can also put RH downtown, I mean, you
Right.
can put that downtown as well, so we don't have to include it in this zoning. Right?
Does that
Well,
make sense where we're going, or are we
it's-
making this
No.
harder?
It's not necessarily that we want to have RH downtown,
Sorry?
but in terms of looking at what RH is, what's the range in terms of what we want? So that was like maybe, that was, by the way, that was one of the renderings from Sapphire Days.
Yeah.
Right, so
Which is,
that has RH, right? That has RH, right? So that would probably, we would probably all agree that that is probably too intense for downtown.
Oh, absolutely.
So then, do we step it up? That was like 8, 9 stories. So a maximum of 4 stories. What's the tallest building we have downtown? 4. What's our height limitation? Do we have
So
height?
it depends on where, so
So
if you're near,
downtown's a big village.
yeah, so it's 7, I think it's 7, but,
Pretty cool.
but if you're right next to resident, or in the district that's pure residential, then it's gonna cap it at 2 and 4.
Or used to be, but now with the new downtown strategic plan, I don't know if we have the same
Standards.
standards. Because we used to have, limitations if you were adjacent to single family
Yeah,
for height. I don't know if that's in the downtown strategic plan.
And the main thoroughfare and the downtown strategic plan is many streets, right?
yeah.
So,
Yes, entirely, yes.
I'm gonna throw this out. What I would rather see is change the downtown plan as it is. Take out whatever high residential is and do not have on the bottom floor retailers. Just make it where it's that, expand the mixed use where mixed use is not a combination in one building. But the mixed use is that there are plots, if you will, around that's commercial. And then have residential ancillary to it,
okay.
right? But not where you're saying it's a condo.
I don't think we have enough space.
Right.
There's just not enough space. If you wanna do that, you're basically gonna take an entire block to make a horizontal type of commercial. I don't think that matches plan. Now, where it does match plan, again, when we get talking about industrial north and these other areas, and that's why we gotta be careful how we do this. But for the straight downtown, I mean, for me personally, I think that is a proven model. Now, just if you, I remember, do you remember when they did downtown Plano years ago? I mean, that was a dumpy, just burned out, it was a burned out building, and it was awful, right? And they came in and they invested a ton of money in it, and those lower businesses, quite honestly, sat for a while. I mean, it was a number of years, remember that, right? But you see what it's developed into, and so, I just,
But all your
Takes time to
high,
mature.
your high
It's exactly.
residential component, the apartments down there around the train track, don't have they don't have commercial on the bottom.
they all do.
Not that big huge complex,
I have-
at least not the last time I was there.
Well, we're looking at something different then, I guess.
But the ones that are the red brick,
I mean, they still have the old downtown buildings, and that's a little bit separate, but that, well, I guess, what is it, Avenue K?
Right.
They went vertical with there, some of those were old burned out, warehouses. Went vertical with it, but commercial under it, well, my point being, those were not overnight successes, but they built the framework that allowed them to build on it. They had the people, they had the infrastructure, and they had, once the time became right, they had the place for those people to come to. And this is what my fear is is that we do this and we block that, any future development out. And I'm not on board with that. That's my personal opinion, so whatever.
We do what?
Pardon me?
You said we do this and we block.
Well, no, yeah, I mean, if they're just all apartments all the way up and down, we are now nothing but a main street full of
Just
apartments, and we will never have.
To which I totally agree.
Yeah, so, but I don't know that we physically have enough space to, because I understand what you're saying, but, you know,
Like
there's some, we could put a restaurant, or we could put a couple restaurants and go.
Dennis, my dentist, for instance, the next block over from Main Street, going south, have it more aligned with zoning it a commercial rather than a residential component. That's how you're gonna expand Main Street and businesses, because all we've got is just about a block and a half.
Well, but, I mean, I don't know that we want, this is gonna sound horrible, but for the Main Street corridor, I don't know that our core customer we're looking for to come in is a dentist. I think we want a boutique and we want flower shops and we want a wine tasting
Love to
place.
have some restaurants.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Well,
We have
yes,
two.
all of those, yes, and that's what I'm saying, but they're not dentists.
Yeah.
Right.
And
They're not
so
tax-
how do we build it to
tax
we
offices.
attract those, specifically attract that market segment?
Right.
And I think we just gotta make it as easy and as forward thinking as we can to make sure that, and it may not, like I said, it may sit there for a year and we may go through a little bit of time, but I don't know, that, I'm just talking.
Just out of curiosity.
I don't have a whole lot of objective.
Does, having Cole Middle School right there have any impact to the potential commercial development? I mean,
Only from the bar.
since it's a school, you can't have certain things within so many feet.
Right. 200 feet.
Pretty
Front
much,
door.
right.
Oh, you're talking about living room.
Front door to front.
Well, I'm talking about
Front door to
restaurants.
front door, so
Yeah.
Main Street, they're probably sorry.
Okay.
300 foot limit, but I've marked it. It's just-
Okay, no, I'm just curious, because I mean, when I'm thinking of Main Street, I'm thinking of the couple of blocks over from each side.
Right, and we're more restricted probably with the church. That's,
Right.
I'm gonna throw in some planner experience here on this, and I think the one thing that we've talked about is like Plano and Grapevine. When you talk about a vibrant downtown and mixed use, when you're mixing those things, if you start locking in retail can be the only thing here, or personal service uses or restaurants. That's what kills the downtown and makes it hard to rent, because you've basically limited the size of what people can do, and you limit the imagination of the people, that the entrepreneurs. I'm not going to say developers, the entrepreneurs, because that's who develops a true downtown and gives it its vibrancy. So when you look at Plano, and that downtown sat vacant for so long because they said we're only going to be these types of uses, and we can only be like 40% of this building can only be this. That's what kept Plano from going through. And then people started asking for variances. And when you created that flexibility, when you had that flexibility initially, then it grew organically, and that's what you need. So you kind of want to look at this not as mixed use and let's just say this category, just say mixed use, and it's all of these different categories. I was in Barcelona and I saw something that blew my mind, because for the last 100 years, their zoning code for every block, and these are all buildings that are 5 stories or more, for every block, in some of this, yeah, part of the new town, not the old part of town, but in the new part of town, the last 100 years, every block has had a requirement that on the bottom floor, there's some kind of health use, whether it's a drugstore, a doctor's office, a dentist, or something like that. And that actually is one of those things that builds a neighborhood, because then everybody has the neighborhood drugstore to gather around, the neighborhood dentist or doctor that they all go to. And it builds that block together. It's one of those kind of building blocks for a neighborhood. So you want to look at that, and so we've got to think about mixed use as a real mix and not a recipe. You're not going to do 6 parts of this and 3 parts of this. It's a mix, and you're going to let it blend and grow organically.
That's fine.
So the beauty of this, what we've been discussing, is the fact that you could do either or. I think that, I don't wanna lose that thought. To go back to our it's either or. It can be integrated vertical or horizontal. Vertical if you don't have a large area of land. But if you have a large area of land, which is what I was showing earlier, on 190, then you can do your traditional strip. But, we have some other factors to contend with downtown. So in addition to having single-family homes, we have the presence of religious institutions.
Yeah.
So that also takes away, and some of them have large parking lots. So that takes away from our ability to build out development.
But
Retail.
that's also a good thing, because Monday through Friday, or Monday through Saturday, that's parking that's available.
Well, that's if they allow you to park.
Well,
That's
I know some churches that have done it, and they
Right.
rent them out
right,
on Friday nights, Saturdays, so it's a source of income.
right.
So that's
Yes.
where partners come in, so it
Yes.
could be.
But when we talk about generating sales taxes, that's land that can never be developed because it's a religious institution.
Parking,
And, right, but parking,
parking's taxable.
but we have elected officials here. They will tell you, equally important to the success of the city is making sure that we can pay for all the services that we're gonna have to pay for in 20, 30, 40, 50 years.
Okay,
Right, so-
I don't mean to cut this short.
No worries.
5 minutes till 7.
Yes.
You have a P and Z meeting that
Yes.
starts in 5 minutes.
Okay, so have we come to a consensus on the developments? I was trying to get to that point.
Well, we circled back around and we were talking about, the standards from R5, the single-family attached duplex and townhomes, increasing the density to 30, and then multifamily increasing to 50.
Okay. Okay.
And then,
With the
and
height
keeping that,
restriction.
with the height restriction at 4 stories,
Okay,
which
That
would be
sounds
consistent with
reasonable.
the downtown area.
Because it would be a downtown
Right.
use. And,
Yeah.
and I think the other thing we have to keep in mind, the density, just from a financial standpoint, has to go up in downtown. Because downtown property is gonna be more expensive than
Yes.
land basis.
Yeah.
So what you're gonna pay for an acre somewhere else versus downtown is gonna be 2 or 3 times in
Right.
downtown. So you have to be able to
Yeah, I agree. I
generate
think
enough
the
revenue.
4 or 5, yeah, I think that sounds right. I don't think what we want to see is something like you see on
right,
Northwest Highway going in towards Preston, where they got the freaking high rises standing there in the middle of nowhere. across the street.
right. You don't wanna see this, right?
Yeah, I don't want to, I really don't want to see that around it.
You know what they're not gonna do.
So, are we gonna take action on that? Is that a?
Let's do it.
I'll second your motion.
And that would be for MRN?
All right,
Yeah.
downtown only.
So
Yes,
takes
increasing
single family
houses,
attached,
keep it at 4
duplex
I mean,
townhome,
4 stories?
increases the density to 30 units an acre. Multifamily from R5 increases the density to 50 units an acre. And then includes,
15 acre or 30?
For the single-family attached duplex and townhomes.
right?
Well, we're not even gonna limit
And
the
then
type.
multifamily too.
Yeah, we're not, I would recommend limiting the type as opposed to just having the flexibility of those in there. Does that make sense? They could be a combination of all.
It could be any of those, but reference them from the previous. Sure.
They're voting. Making a motion. All right.
And then allows limited commercial retail uses, which we'll do in the next.
There's a motion down there and a second, all those in favor? Put your hands. All opposed?
And did we get the count?
2 opposed.
2 opposed. It went by landslide.
Who was opposed?
All right.
Just Fowler and Vince Taylor.
All right. So the next one, residential high rise. And that's only in a restricted area, not all over the city.